I mean, I almost feel it always starts with school. I know there is a difference in school in the UK and the US slightly, but I've always found that my experience of school was that if you want to be an employee, or if you want to be, in like a high paying job, like a lawyer, doctor, it's so great. But I felt that if you wanted to be like an artist or an entrepreneur or anything kind of outside of that box, the education that I found that school was providing wasn't there. And it's funny because I pretty much dropped out of what I guess the equivalent is high school there. Here we call it secondary school. And I would just be at home learning After Effects and like doing music. And it was, it wasn't just, oh, I'm not going to go to school. I had stuff going on and kind of, a lot of time couldn't face going in. But it was funny because at the time it was like such a panic, and everyone like, my parents, everyone were like, oh, if you don't go to school, like you're not going to have anything. And it's kind of like, you'll never be able to get a job. You'll never do this. And it was like, yeah. And for a minute I believed it, but then now I look back and I think if I'd continued to really care, about, and that's not to discourage people who want to go down that path, of course, but if it's not, I don't think it's the path for everyone, and I think there's not many options if you don't fit into that category.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're in the club or you're not, and it's kind of like one of the best things I think I did was to focus on that stuff, because it meant by the time that I was at that age of finishing school, I now had learned all this stuff about filmmaking, all this, and I was able to start, taking these risks and creating. I know that I would have been well into my late 20s before I started taking those risks had I paid more attention like in school, because it would have taken me longer to break free from it. But at the time, it seemed like such a, like my whole world will end when I get past school because I just have nothing.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a complete lie.
School in general, and this is my pet peeve with the whole cookie cutter system of education. It's designed to turn out workers and not entrepreneurs. And I feel like a lot of people are falling through the cracks because of that. There's a lot of people with a great deal of potential who, if we rooted our whole education and here's how you start a business, here's how you hone a practice, in that, God, so many people would be much more happier because they would have more quickly found what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Instead, the system here is, here's how to get a job. Here's how to type your resume. Here's how to appeal to someone.
How to apply.
Here's how to fit into an office environment. If you don't fit in, you're less likely to be hired because people want you to fit into their culture. And it's just like,
yeah.
I don't want that. I never did. And
it's like how to conform.
Yeah,
like,
how to conform.
On every level.
Wear these really uncomfortable shoes that offer no support whatsoever because we have a dress code. Here's what that dress code looks like.
And it's like, I love there's a quote from, is it Steve Wozniak, the co-founder of Apple. And although obviously there's parts of his, life which are kind of, whatever, there's this one thing really stuck out, which was he said that the problem with school in his mind is that it tells you that if you don't have the same answer as everyone else, you're wrong. But when it comes to creating, you have to have a different answer than everyone else. And I think that summarizes so beautifully for me the idea that, in the test, if you don't all reach it the same way, that's wrong. But like when it comes to creating, the whole point is you're supposed to break out of the mold if you really want to,
I mean, that's how
it's true.
That's how we grow. That's how society grows. That's how civilization grows. And this is coming full circle, this conversation, because like it goes back to sort of invention and not ticking off what, the craft, or not appealing to the demands of a client because they just want non-creative stuff. And I don't know if you've heard this sort of phrasing before, but I hear this from some business consultants all the time. I know a few business consultants, and they always say, if you were to ask someone at the turn of the century what they needed most, they would have said a faster horse. So then you would have never had the car if you could breed a faster horse. Instead, somebody thought outside the box, said, well, why don't I make an engine, put it inside a chassis, and boom, we have a new invention, It's better than a horse. It's not likely to die as soon as a horse will die, or get exhausted as soon as a horse will get exhausted.
Yeah.
So then, not 100 years later, but maybe 75 years later, what do you need most? I need better fuel consumption. Are you sure you don't want an electric car?
Yeah.
It's just
It's
like
true. It's funny. And it is that thing of full circle. Like I feel like you can look at any area in life and apply the same logic of like, and that's I think that's the thing, is that I do wonder what the world would be like if if it was the other way around, where like everyone was encouraged to kind of think outside the box. If that had become the new box, I don't know. But
yeah,
I mean, even there was this thing I saw Kanye West actually was talking about, which was why boxes? Like he was saying, it's so interesting because we're born in a hospital, and then we're put into like a crib, and then we're put into a house, then we're put into an office, then we're put into a coffin. And it's kind of like we just live a life of squares and boxes, where metaphorically and literally we're just living our life in like these boxes, where everything like a hamster on a wheel.
that is the most English thing I've heard come out of your mouth.
And it's I mean, it's that's the thing. It's, and I feel like that's again, going back to fractals. That was one of the kind of the big appeals, because before I did fractals, one of the last VFX jobs I did was on it was like a interactive game that became a movie, and it had like, it was like a big budget. Well, so not big budget, but like it had a fair budget, and it had like actors from like Star Wars and like Peaky Blinders and stuff in it. And they basically, what had happened is they'd run out of budget, so they'd gone on Fiverr looking, to try and, cut, because they'd already overstretched the budget. Can we find someone that will, do the last additional visual effects?
Yeah.
With a, without charging too much. And obviously they came across me, and I ended up doing this job. And I think it was like one of those jobs where it's kind of like, the pay isn't really, for what it is, the pay is pretty poor, but it's a good experience. And, I'll put it on my reel and all that. And the experience of working in that way of like, here's the in and out folder, and like, the way it was with, how, and obviously I can't go into too many details and all that, but it was one of those ones where everything was so organized as a project, and I was, you feel just like not a person, you just feel like a tool of someone else that just says, do this, do that. And it was just, It felt so dehumanizing. And that's not to say that I wasn't grateful for that project, but I meant, and some people, I think could enjoy working that way. But for me, having not worked in that way before, it wasn't specific to this project, but just the way that, the visual effects industry can work on a bigger scale, it really made me think, oh, this isn't what I want to do. But it's interesting. When I studied music production, we had marketing lectures about music marketing. They were telling us about marketers market to people depending on which side of the brain they use most. Apparently, it's like left and right side, and apparently they put it into two different categories. I think it's cognitive and affective or something. And it's where if you're cognitive, let's say you were selling someone a camera, if you were cognitive, they'd say, this camera has this many, this resolution, it has this input, and they tell you all the information, all the data. And if you're effective, they sell you on feeling as opposed to information. So they'd say, with this camera, you can create this, you can get this. And it's funny because you can kind of look at any advert nowadays, or commercial it would be, and you can like work out who they're going for. Because like if it's like a gaming PC, it'll be for a more cognitive audience. So they'll have like, these are the specs. But then if it's like a can of Coke, they might get more effective. How does it make you feel? What's the experience? And I feel like jobs are also the same. Like there's certain people who like working in that way of, I need it all ticked off. I need to know all the data. I need it like that. I need the statistics. And then there's people who say, just give me the kind of vibe of it, just give me the feeling, and, they sort of flow. And that's not to say that one is better than the other, because I think you need both. But I think it's an interesting thing to observe.